Welcome to Mind Meets Body and Soul, a podcast that connects the dots between clinical mental health and spiritual holistic wellness. I'm Heather, a licensed clinical social worker and mental health guru.
And I'm Devon, a Reiki master, spiritual teacher, and lover of all things woo-woo. We're here to discuss various wellness topics, highlighting the connection between the mind, body, and soul.
We'll be offering nuggets of wisdom from each of our fields, with the ultimate goal of bridging the gap between our two worlds. Whether you lean more into cognitive psychology
or are guided by the ancient teachings of spirituality and energetics, our intention is to help you prioritize yourself and unlock a fresh perspective to healing, growth, and expansion. We're so excited you're here. Let's jump in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Meets Body and Soul. Devon here, reporting live on this very sunny, warm day. Feels like summer. Here with my lovely co-host, Heather. How's it going today?
It's going, Devon. I'm loving this sunshine that we're having. The birds are chirping, the flowers are blooming. I'm wearing my pink shirt. It's like very springy, and I love it.
Very springy. It really does make a world of a difference. I was actually talking to my friend a couple weeks ago, like when it was starting to get warmer out in New Jersey, and she was like, I had a conversation with my therapist on one of the days it was really sunny. I went out for a walk and I came to our session. I was like, I don't know if I need therapy anymore. She's like, girl, you just went outside, the sun just came out, like nothing else has changed other than that.
Right.
You still need therapy. Are you starting to see some like ups in mental health with the weather changes?
I think what's interesting is that I'm seeing both. I'm seeing a lot of ups. People are just happier, more joyful, blooming themselves as spring is getting nicer. And then I also know that this is a really hard time of year for a lot of people. And actually, like, people can tend to feel even worse in their depression because they notice like such a stark difference between like the sunshine and the flowers blooming and the birds chirping. And they're like, well, I thought my depression would go away and it doesn't. So for some people, they're like happy and jolly and it's great. And for other people, they actually struggle more than ever in the springtime, which is interesting.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, always a reminder to meet yourself exactly where you are, to lean on the support that you have. There really is no like one size fits all or like one magic wand, one magic pill for everybody. So thank you for that helpful reminder. It was important to share.
Yeah, just something for those who might feel that contrast or that difference. Like, I just want you to know you're not alone and just keep growing, keep holding on, and, reach out to the support that you need and get the help that you deserve.
Yeah. It makes me feel really thankful that we have a space like this, a platform like this, where we can share these conversations, and actually perfectly leads into what I'm going to be speaking about today. Because, yeah, as you and I know, this life, this human journey is messy, and we're all just stumbling around trying to figure it out, especially in this like eclipse void that we've been in. We're slowly emerging from. So I'm happy to be here sharing this conversation with you, Heather.
I am too. We kind of teased with what we're talking about today, but tell us what it is that we're going to be delving into in this episode today.
Well, I know we love to say this and also feel a little silly for saying it. I saw something on Instagram, but recently I was seeing a trend, and it was around this point of social media being a highlight reel. And I've been seeing a lot of accounts kind of opening up and sharing some of the more vulnerable parts of their lives, of their healing journeys, et cetera, that they've been experiencing. And I know it's brought a whole lot of inspiration. I know that it's also brought a little bit of like, with anything, a little bit of criticism with it as well. But it feels like a very timely conversation to be having, especially like I'll bring in the astro wisdom over here with what's going on in astrology. We're entering this age of Aquarius for those who have been following along with that. And Aquarius is like the authenticity bringer of the zodiac. And on top of that, we are emerging from this eclipse season, and a big theme of the eclipse season of the past full moon and the past new moon, it really emerged around these themes of authenticity, identity, relationships. And so it's not surprising at all that there is like this authenticity movement on social media. I took to social media as well to share my honest opinion on what I was craving to see, the authenticity that I was desiring to see from especially the leaders that I follow these days. And it received a lot of positive feedback. And it really showed me how one example of authenticity really creates an impact. And we talk a lot in this podcast about the ripple effect and how one little thing, like one drop of something, can create this positive impact or this wave of change. And I would love to share this conversation with you today and make some of the connections there.
I think it is an important conversation, and one that, like we've talked about before, isn't always the easiest for me in terms of, because like when you say authenticity, my head goes to like openly sharing and just like talking about all the things, and I have all these layers, as you and our listeners now know, that I go through before I say anything that it is that I'm going to say. So I'm excited to be able to unpack like what it is that you mean when you're saying authenticity versus what we're not saying, and just kind of like exploring all of it. And I'm not at all surprised that it's like a timely conversation that we're having according to like the astrology world.
Yeah, I think that's such an important disclaimer as well that we can, make at the very start of this episode and then really move our way into it throughout the episode of like when I say authenticity, I don't mean like share every single little detail about your life with everybody. And I think I've been seeing that's kind of like some of the pushback on social media is like, people are feeling maybe that they have to share everything. And if they're sharing everything, then what's left for privacy? And like, yes, full disclaimer on my side too, whereas I'm really in on this authenticity revolution here, I mean radical authenticity with boundaries, like everything else that we talk about in this podcast.
It reminds me of the quote I've said my old supervisor told me of: human first, therapist second. There's a way for me to be a human and authentic without even talking about myself in my sessions with my clients. So I think that's what we're kind of getting to, is like showing up as your true whole self with acceptance, with authenticity. But that doesn't mean that you have to start unpacking trauma with like the random people on the street, or just like, like you said, spilling all the beans with everyone all the time.
Right, exactly. And I think, we talk oftentimes about the pendulum swinging. I think we can see how in past years, like the pendulum has swung so far to one side where it's like social media really was just a like highlight reel of all of the perfection in your life. Like, let's show everybody how fun your life is and how beautiful your life is. And so maybe now this is where the pendulum, we start to see it swinging in the other direction where there's been a whole lot more of openness and honesty and vulnerable shares. And then eventually we find ourselves in the middle. That's always the goal there.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the middle ground is always important, but I do tend to notice that like when we're experiencing one thing, which is the like inauthentic, perfect social media stuff, when we're stuck on that side, the pendulum has to swing the other way before we find that middle ground. So, what does this all look like for you? What does it mean to you to be and live authentically?
So I found myself in a little bit of like an unhinged area in this first like this set of shares that I had. And I think it stemmed from all of the kind of like craziness of this eclipse where I was feeling myself wanting to express more of the wholeness of who I am. These feelings and this desire for more expression has really been bubbling up across the past few months where I started to realize like I think people view me as one way. For example, me coming in to this my field as a spiritual teacher and a Reiki healer, I think people I was realizing that I think people tend to view me as like this purely love light being who talks about like peace and, all of the like beautiful light filled things, right? Manifestation, all those parts of spirituality. And I think that people were maybe missing the other side to me of like the version of me that is like passionate and like dives into her shadows, like the darkness of her being. And I think it was in part me not showing that side of me, and it was making me feel almost a little frustrated because I was feeling like you're not you generally, not you, Heather, just in general, like you aren't seeing all of me, and I want you to see all of me. And I think that that's like this movement that we've been on collectively with this eclipse season, with this past full and new moon, is this desire to be seen, to be loved, to be celebrated for all that we are, because we are more than just what you see on a highlight reel of social media.
And I think that's so important for everyone to understand, is that like even when I'm showing up as like the mental health professional, I think it's important for us to be seen as human and flawed and imperfect. And again, we can do that in a way where we're not like talking about ourselves or making it about us, but we're modeling to people that like you can do hard things and you can struggle and still show up. We have to learn how to like embrace all parts of ourselves. And I think if we can model that, I think that's a big part of being a therapist, healer, mentor, coach for the clients that we work with.
And it's why I really appreciate these conversations that we have and why we get onto this podcast and we'll share some of the things that we are healing, working through, processing, experiencing. Because when I think about the teachers that I want to learn from, the healers that I want to work with, the people that inspire me, it's those who aren't just presenting this shiny, beautiful, perfect life. Rather, those who, as you said, human first, who are demonstrating all of that. We're always inspired by stories of people who overcome challenges and overcome obstacles to get to where they are. Nobody's ever inspired by a story of somebody's like, yeah, I had everything handed to me on a silver platter and I'm super successful in my business. Like that's just not what we find most inspiring. And I feel myself having this conversation with you and feeling more like passionate and fiery than normal. I don't know if you're picking up on that, but I'm feeling that within.
It's funny because I have like all my like ethics and teachers in my head, like telling me how to navigate this conversation. And the thing I think that's important to what you're saying, like I feel passionate, but almost I think in the opposite way, because I do worry and I have heard horror stories about people's experience in therapy or working with another person. I think there's a way, like, okay, I'm going to use an analogy. If I have climbed a mountain, I've obviously overcome hard things and had to deal with the challenges and all that comes with that. If you come to me and you want to learn how to scuba dive, I don't have direct experience with that, but I have done hard things. And I think that's where, like, with this authenticity piece, to me, it's less about like the details and the nitty gritty of what someone's gone through. And it's about digging deeper into the why behind it or the process that you've gone through and then showing up authentically with that, of working through how to coach yourself through something hard or working through how to stay motivated or how to stay driven, like whatever the things are. Because even though I've never scuba dived and that's what you're trying to do, I can still help you do that because I too have lived through hard experiences and I can help you do that without making it about me. I don't know. I'm feeling like protective in this conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I appreciate that viewpoint there. And I think that helped me mold. Like, I don't need somebody who's gone through exactly what I've been through to get it, but somebody who at least has like navigated their own shadows or their own depth, overcome their own obstacles, have integrated the lessons so that they can then be that really embodied healer, teacher, coach, therapist. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make more sense.
I had shared this honest post a couple of weeks ago and received a lot of positive feedback on it, which then prompted me to create this second post around the three ways in which our authenticity impacts others. And I would love to speak to those three things or share a conversation on those three things. And then we can, as we like to do, like reverse engineer and like get into the like tangible, like, okay, how can you implement this in your day to day life?
All right, let's hear it.
So, the first point that I had made in this post, one of the first things that I noticed as a result, as a positive impact from not only like my vulnerable share, but some of the ones that I've been seeing on social media was the deepening of connection and how people feel more deeply connected when they are more deeply connected to those who are showing up authentically. And I mean, it supports what we have been talking about just now. It's like when we know what others have experienced or supporting what you're talking about, if it's not even like exactly what somebody has been through, but what they have navigated, what they have learned, what they have integrated, and how that has made them the person they are today, we do tend to feel more connected to them. It's like when we had that conversation a few weeks ago and you were sharing openly and honestly, I know I felt more connected to you, and I would imagine that our listeners also felt more connected to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's what people say when they talk about feeling seen or feeling heard is it's truly being seen or truly understood. And I do think that that allows us to create that like depth in the connection rather than like something being superficial.
Yeah, and it's like that, oh wow, they get it. I think that's what's so helpful and as what you said of us feeling seen is like feeling like somebody gets it, feeling like somebody understands what it is that we're going through, and that is truly what deepens the connection between between others.
It almost makes me think of like two puzzle pieces that like fit together. Like you feel like you fit with that person, but you're kind of bonded with them over the ability to like resonate on that thing.
Yeah, exactly that. So that was number one. It deepens connection. The second piece that I had was that your authenticity cultivates trust. And of course, coming from my perspective on this, I was speaking more about like the teachers, healers, mentor, coach field where it's cultivating deeper trust between like the client and the coach or, just anybody that you might be working with and in bringing it back to your scuba diving, mountain climbing analogy, right? It starts with that connection, deepening that connection at first. And then it's also the like, okay, because I feel like you can see me, I can see the sincerity in like your shares and in what you're bringing to the table as like the expert in this field. And that is what cultivates that trust in a relationship.
The trust piece to me, it sounds like you're also describing some of that understanding and some of that like depth again. Like I am able to more deeply connect with you and therefore establish this trust. It's almost like the deepening the connection to me is like a prerequisite or unlocks the ability to then form that true deep trust.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know that we've talked about the importance of trust or the foundational need of trust in a relationship as well. So if we're talking about trust between like us and our clients, it's that trust that then allows our clients to go deeper with us in a session.
Yeah. We call it building rapport in my world, but it's all the same things that you're saying.
I was actually thinking of that word too. Yeah. Yeah, we build rapport with people whom we trust.
So, in addition, then to deepening our connections and rapport building, trust building, understanding, what is the third piece of this?
The third piece was simply that it inspires authenticity in others, or it inspires vulnerability in others. Seeing other people more openly share what it is they're experiencing or what it is that they have overcome, navigated through, that inspires us because we feel that we are in a safe space where we can share without judgment. And, this is obviously the benefit of a therapy session or a healing session is like you're held in that safe space, that safe container where you can more openly share. And I really do love to see that on social media, which is like, a wide open container for anybody to see, people are still feeling safe to share openly and honestly and to show up authentically on social media as a result of seeing other people do it as well.
It would be very easy to sit here and have a conversation about all the negative things that has happened over like with social media, but I think what you're speaking to highlights its exact purpose is it's a social platform where we're really there to connect and trust and share. And I love the idea that this whole process is almost full circle, in that once I have connected and trusted someone else, I can then turn around and offer and do something similar for other people in my life too. And I think that's a very beautiful full circle moment.
Agreed. Yes. The ripple effect of your authenticity is, really what we can get to here in this conversation. And it's not easy, of course. But the way that I see it is that like we've worked really hard to be able to open up in the safe containers that we have, like be it a therapy session or a healing session. And I really love to start to see this movement where, and I know that this has been happening across probably the past few years, we're starting to see it more and more where there is this embracing of the wholeness of our being and the wholeness of our experiences. What came to mind was there's nothing to hide. And I don't mean that we have to bear and show everything, but there's no shame in the experiences that we're having as human beings. So why not allow people to see or to experience or to hear some of that? Because what does that ultimately do? I think it leaves for greater support, greater connection, and greater love as a whole.
As you're sharing all of this, I'm almost thinking of the synonyms of authenticity to be acceptance, acknowledgement, honesty, and not so much just like flippantly sharing everything. It's just acknowledging and owning all parts of yourself and who you are and being able to like stand in that. And I don't have to share it, but I do have to acknowledge that it's part of me. And that then helps me help you acknowledge and do some of that work as well.
I love that synonym that you use there of like owning all parts of you. Yes. And I would love to wrap up this conversation by like getting into some tangible steps because I know that you're going to come in, Therapist Heather, with a little bit of, as you were mentioned, like feeling like a little bit defensive, or not defensive, but feeling like a little protective, maybe the word is, because there's a version of me that's like unleash it all, like yell from the rooftops exactly who you are. And again, I mean that with boundaries, but I feel like it'll be helpful to hear your side of things as well for how we can begin to tangibly lean into authenticity here.
I think the first thing is to do the work. And that's such a cliche thing to say, but we have to be able to sit with and acknowledge all those parts of ourselves and do that shadow work and do that inner child work and sit in the uncomfy parts that we may not want to even acknowledge exist. I think it's hard for us to be able to be authentically who we are or holistically who we are if there's parts of us that we're keeping in the shadows or that we're hiding from our own consciousness, from our own awareness, but also from like accepting on our own level. So I think that's the first and foremost thing, in my opinion, is that we have to be able to see all parts of ourselves before we can authentically like stand in that.
It's such a great point. And yes, I think from a personal standpoint and also from where I'm seeing it and people that I know, people that are more like, this is who I am, it's because they have done some type of healing work where they have met that themselves. They've brought acceptance and eventually love for all parts of themselves in the safe containers, in like the safe private spaces that now they feel the comfort in then sharing more openly and honestly. So I think that's a great starting point. Like start small. Start by sharing yourself authentically with your therapist, with your coach, your teacher, your healer, your small circle, and then if you feel comfortable, work your way outwards.
Yeah. Because truly, if it's almost to this authenticity that you're describing of being able to like shout it from the rooftops, I think also alludes to a confidence in it. And I don't think that when we are first acknowledging ourselves or owning all parts of ourselves, I don't know that we always have that confidence to shout it from the rooftops. But once we do, and once we claim it, then we can and want to help other people do the same. We're like, oh my gosh, what a journey that was. But like, I'm here on the other side and I want to help other people hold their hand and walk them along that path as well so that they can get where I am now.
Thank you, Heather. This has been so helpful. I think it's like the Sagittarius in me that's like, there's so much freedom over here. Like,
Yeah.
come take the leap. Oh, I think Ellie just got spooked by by my passion here. But really, like, there's so much freedom here, and I like that's the part of me that's so passionate with this stuff because I want everybody to experience it. So it's helpful to have you come in and just kind of like reel it in a little bit because sometimes I need that. Like, I can get carried away in the expansiveness of a vision, of a feeling, and so thank you for grounding me a bit and also offering some like really helpful, tangible tools for our audience, as always.
Yeah. Anytime. That's what I'm here for. But as we're nearing the end, I want you to share any tips or wisdom that you have for our audience who is looking to get to the end of the road where you are.
If I think about like the biggest benefit of living a life with authenticity, of accepting yourselves, accepting others, it really, that word that comes through for me is freedom or freeing. There's so much freedom that comes when you do embrace all parts of you. And when you do see that all parts of you are welcome in, the right environments with the right people, the right relationships, and that is exactly, to tie in that astro insight there. Like when we think about Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, Aquarius is that zodiac sign that encourages you to let your freak flag fly, to embrace all parts of you, knowing that when you do that, it does inspire, it does encourage and support your community, those around you, to do the same as well. So, freedom.
I love that. I think that is helpful to give a like it motivates. It's not going to be easy, but it helps us understand that it's worth it at the end because the freedom is what you're working towards and what you're trying to get to.
Yes. And my Sagittarius self loves nothing more than freedom.
I love that. This was a really good episode, Devon. Thank you for sharing this topic and bringing this in for us to unpack and then share with our audience. I'm hopeful. I know it will resonate with some of them, but I'm hopeful, of course, that it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the good thing is if you don't find yourself here yet, you've got Heather balancing it out for us, strongly replacement of hers, bringing
Mm.
balance so that we can find our own middle ground, find what resonates with us. So thank you, Heather, for sharing this conversation with me.
Happy to do so always.
And with that, we thank you for joining us for another episode of Mind Meets Body and Soul. Everyone, so much for participating in our Mind Meets Body and Soul 1 year anniversary gift giveaway. It has been so fun receiving all of the screenshots and the feedback from you all. Heather, we had so many fun submissions from people that we didn't even know were listening to the podcast, whether they were friends, family members, clients, or even total strangers on the internet. So it's really cool to know that this podcast is reaching people and that our audience is finding it resonating with others.
Yeah, it's really cool. It was, I think my favorite thing was to see people that neither you or I knew that are out there in the ethers listening. I just think that like really spoke to my heart, and it just like validates every reason that I'm here and every reason I want to continue having these conversations. So thank you.
Fully agreed. We will be announcing the recipient of this winner along with sharing some of the feedback that we received in next week's episode. So stay tuned.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We are so glad that you took the time to share this space with us. We'll be releasing new episodes of Mind Meets Body and Soul every Tuesday, so be sure to give us a follow and share this podcast with those you love.
To connect with us and join our communities, head to the show notes where you'll find our contact information and individual websites. Until next week, stay grounded, keep growing, and trust that everything you seek is unfolding for you.